Okay.
Okay, I call to order this 6:30 p.m. member meeting of council, welcoming all the residents of, or some of the residents of Pelham here to take in this exciting event. We start off, let's see. Call to order and declare, I see we have quorum. This meeting will be an official meeting, take place. Ask all those that can and to rise, and we shall sing the national anthem led by the clerk, Ms. Bozzato.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true faith with love, in all the songs command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Ms. Bozzato. Approval of agenda, but we want to miss that.
So I'm just going to ask that the agenda be approved, and are there any amendments to the agenda?
Okay. So it's moved by Councilman Trophy and seconded by Councilman Wink that be it resolved that the agenda for December 17th, 2018 regular council meeting be adopted as circulated. Anyone have any amendments to this agenda? I'm sorry, Councilman Wink?
I'm under the understanding that a number of the residents here are for the delegation and the presentation from Jim Jeffs, so it might be worthwhile moving that forward in the agenda.
And which is that?
So 5.2.1.
Yes.
If we can move that ahead of presentations.
Start it before the auditor?
Yes.
So he wants to have that one
Yep,
first.
okay.
This one second?
So you want this ahead of this or after this?
He wants he's asking that the
Yeah.
Jeff's presentation come before the auditor.
Okay. Okay, so we will move the Mr. Jeff's presentation 5.2.1, and we will put that just ahead of the 5.1.1. Is that suitable, Councilman Wink?
So
Yes,
you
that's
need
great.
a
Thank
second
you.
and a vote?
We need a seconder on that, please. Seconded by Councilman Trophy, and
So
the
you're
vote.
going to vote on that?
Okay,
and
so
then
we're
you're
going to
up
vote on
amendment.
the amended one? Okay, well, good, thank you.
And then there was, the fire chief had also
Yes.
asked that his report be considered directly after
And which one is
the
that? So we also have,
11.2.1.
yeah, request to move 11.2.1, so we will also move that ahead of the,
So I need a mover and a seconder.
okay. So I need a mover, which would be Councilman Heidelbrandt, and a seconder, Councilman Hahn. So that will now also appear before 5.1.1.
But actually it will appear after, so you'll have 5.1.2, 5.1.1, then 11.2.1, and you just need to call the question on that one. Call the question on that one, then I have one more amendment.
Oh, okay, so I'll call the question on that one. All in favor of this? Okay, that's approved. And then we have one more.
We have the addendum to add the memorandum from the Chief Administrative Officer to add that at 11.2.3.
Okay. So we also have an addition to the agenda to add 11.2.3 from the CAO a memorandum on parking for the MCC. I need a seconder.
Need a mover and a seconder?
Need a mover on this, please. Mover will be Councillor Trophy. Seconder will be Councillor Hahn. All those in favor? Okay, we're good to go.
Now
Thank
you're
you.
going to vote on the agenda as amended.
Okay, so now we have to vote, be it on the agenda as amended. All those in favor? And the agenda is amended. Thank you. Okay.
So now you will hear from the presenter, Mr. Brooks.
So now we have one delegation appearing before council tonight, and that is Mr. Jeff. May he please step forward and address council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff, and fellow citizens. I'm here as a representative, as chair, really, of the Pelham Community Preservation Coalition. And I'm here to ask that the council, Pelham Council, opt out of having retail cannabis stores within the boundaries of Pelham. So I'm going to go through about 5 or 6 minutes giving a little history of Pelham and also some information. These are things that I have learned regarding what the rules will be when this comes into place. So historically, Pelham's been here, 50 years ago it was very different. It was just a very small community. When I was here, there were no signal lights at all in town. Downtown consisted of a few stores. Behind the downtown was an open field, and further down Highway 20 was Maury's Nursery. However, time changes, population grows. So now you go down what used to be Fawnhill Nurseries, and now all that's left is really Nursery Lane. Downtown has changed dramatically. There's a lot of buildings and a lot of new stores. What used to be an open field is now a plaza. Further out of town, what used to be Maury's Nursery is now the community center, shopping center, and then a large residential area. The question is, what will Pelham look like in the future? And really, that's largely up to you, the decisions you make in the next 4 years. Now, the previous council made a decision regarding cannabis production facilities. And what was done, really, there's different ways of looking at it. Is cannabis production agriculture, or is it industrial? And obviously, it depends on what they're doing. But what council chose to do is classify cannabis production as agricultural, while many communities classified it industrial. So what we see now, and I live on Foss Road, so I get an aroma often of cannabis. Well, it smells like a skunk, and that orange glow in the sky. So I think it was an error, but that's water under the bridge. So really what we have to face now is the choice that you have to make, which is have to make very soon before January 22nd, and that is whether to allow retail cannabis stores in Fawnhill. And if you look at the federal legislation, there are no rules at all. You can have as many stores as you want, and they can be any location at all. And communities that decide to allow, actually, there's a lot of money available, millions of dollars available for all communities, period. But there's special extra money available for those communities that decide to allow cannabis or allow the stores in place. And that money goes for, and this is a quote, for policing, public health, by law enforcement, and potentially paramedic services, which kind of makes you wonder why there's extra money required for paramedic services. So I wasn't sure where to stand in this, so I Googled, really, Colorado and cannabis to see what it said. So if you look at Colorado, they legalized cannabis in 2014, and after that, the incidence of crime went up compared to the national average. As far as violent crime, it went up 12.5%. That was from 2013 to 2018, compared to the national average of under 5%. The other thing that also went up is the incidence of claims as far as accidents. People driving under the influence, perhaps, and banged into something, so that went up as well. And I think the most striking thing, or thing that's of greatest concern, is teenagers. There were many more teenagers ending up in hospital after it was legalized. Matter of fact, it quadrupled. So as far as licensing, and it's interesting that today, supposed to be the time you could get a license online. That was the date, but now they've changed that because I guess there's a lack of supply. But it's governed by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. And it's surprising to me that on November the 29th of 2018, there still wasn't all the information out yet as to what the regulations would be. But there are two published requirements, which I think are interesting too. The one is that any cannabis retail store has to be at least 150 meters away from the property line of a school. And to put that into perspective, if you're driving down the highway and there's an emergency vehicle in front of you, you have to be 150 meters behind it. So it's not very far. And the other thing that there's a requirement for is a notice that has to be up for 15 days to see if there's any concerns by citizens about the opening of a store. And this also is interesting because it says, any objection to the proposed store location will only be valid if it relates to a matter of public interest as defined by the federal government. And if you want to know how that's defined, if you've watched TV in the last number of months, there's a lawyer that comes on and says why they're putting cannabis or making cannabis legal. So it has to be one of those three things. So basically, there can be no objection. If it opens up, it's there. You can make an objection, but nothing's really valid. Now, on November the 21st, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario advised new councils to wait for full understanding of the legislative authority, once it is passed, the content of the regulations, yet to be tabled, and understanding of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission's process for dealing with retail store licenses or store authorizations before making a decision. As a matter of fact, tonight, Niagara-on-the-Lake is passing their resolution. And I'd just like to read you, there are a number of whereases, but I'll just read to you three of them. And whereas there has not and will not be an opportunity for thoughtful discussion with the community before January 22nd, 2019, and whereas municipalities that opt out by January 22nd, 2019 will be given an opportunity to opt out, if they wish, at a later date. And whereas the provincial government continues to provide information on proposed regulations. So all the information isn't in, so we feel strongly that the town should opt out. Now, the other concern I have, or we have, is that I was told that there could be debate on this, but the final resolution would be January the 21st of next year. I don't know if that still stands, but if that's the case, the resolution's the 21st, and I guess the result can be emailed for the 22nd. What happens? I mean, it's mid-January. Snowstorm, power outage, flu, so you don't have a quorum. Therefore, we're in. So is there any reason that there can't be a special meeting? And I know all it takes is the mayor to request it, or the majority of members. So you need either 4 members or the mayor to request a special meeting to debate it, set the date. You only need 48 hours notice. It can be done. Other than waiting and taking a chance. Now, I was a dentist for 45 years, and I always had to book appointments. I just can't imagine. Give you an example. Say a girl's getting married on Saturday, so I book an appointment on Friday to put some crowns in. They don't fit. So if I say, well, how would I ever know that? Well, weather, you cannot depend on weather. So to wait until January 21st to make the resolution just doesn't make sense. With respect, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Okay, so first of all, Mr. Jess, thank you for making your presentation to council. We have a presentation from staff in the early part of New Year. I don't know exactly the date that that's going to be presented to council. You're right in saying that, yes, we are cutting it close, having a meeting January 21st. I guess we would have to have that staff meeting, staff presentation to us sometime between now and the 21st. I believe it's is it the 7th that the staff is making a presentation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the 14th.
Okay, so the staff is making a presentation to council, recommendations on the 14th of January. I guess, well, is there any reason that we can't vote on it that night, Madam Clerk, or why is it that we are, why is it that this council has pushed it back to the 21st?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the meeting on the 14th is scheduled as a special committee of the whole meeting to allow for a fulsome discussion by the members of council, and then whatever recommendation is made by the committee of the whole would be ratified at the next council meeting, which is on the 21st, scheduled for the 21st.
Yes. So my question to you, you are the experienced one here, or do you see any problem with that, or are you comfortable with the January 21st? Or do you believe we should call a special meeting of council? I'll defer to your experience on this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a meeting scheduled for January the 7th, which is the budget open house. We then have scheduled committee of the whole for the 14th. Knowing that the deadline is the 22nd, so we worked around that schedule. I would suggest that you double check with the CAO and the Director of Planning who is authoring the report. I know she's been working very hard on the report to have it ready for you for the 14th, but there are a number of different pieces of regulation and legislation that she is considering as part of that report.
Yes. One thing that is nice that it is as late as it can be is because anybody who watches TV, and as you referred to, Mr. Jeffs, it appears to be a vastly quickly moving target. Mm-hmm. People that were thinking that they were going to be selling, being able to open a retail store. The latest thing on the TV a couple nights ago was the provincial government plans on making that a lottery system. Mm-hmm. So people that thought they were for sure in on the prospects of opening a store, now it's all up to chance. Myself, you raised some good points. Why leave it till the latest? I guess the thing is, we January with the budget meetings, special planning meetings, I guess myself, it would appear to me that it's going to stay the 21st, and we'll just have to set that meeting in stone, realizing how important the decision is. And believe me, everyone on this council has heard from people, the residents. We know how important this decision is, but I think myself, I'm comfortable knowing that once we have a meeting, I realize there could be snowstorms and what have you, but I think we'll just have to leave it at the 21st, and that gives us time to get all the information together we can and make the decision that night. I realize it's cutting it close, but close in this term should be good. I'm sorry, other questions, comments?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Trophy.
Is it possible that we add it to a special meeting on January 7th at 5 p.m. and then bring it to council on the 14th?
But staff isn't making their recommendations to
Till the
council
14th.
to the 14th.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps in the, after that meeting then, could we?
Well, so the process is when you have a committee of the whole, which is not quite as formal as a council meeting, the committee of the whole meeting, that is when we will discuss all the facts that we have been given, and then the decision is usually put off to the next council meeting. That is the process. Yes,
I have
Councilman.
a question to the developer, Director of Development. If we decide to accept cannabis retail stores in our community, does the 5 greenhouses that grow the cannabis automatically get an opportunity to have a retail store on their premises?
Mr. Mayor, through you, they would only be allowed to have a retail store if the zoning permits for retail use. So they don't automatically get it. It depends on the zoning on the lands. They have to have zoning that permits retail uses.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, it's agriculture, what we
Correct.
have, and they have to come through the city to ask for retail.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Jeffs? Okay, Mr. Jeffs, thank you for your presentation.
Good, thank you,
And I imagine we will see you here on the 21st.
for sure. Unless there's a snowstorm and none of us can get here.
Thank you. So, Council, I forgot a step that I should have asked, and that is, after viewing the agenda, is there any councilmen that have to declare pecuniary interest on the agenda for tonight? Okay, none is declared. If the clerk can please note that. Thank you. Okay.
Receive his
good.
delegation.
So, a motion put forth by Councilman Corr, seconded by Councilman Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the delegation by J. Jeffs on behalf of Pelham Community Preservation Coalition regarding cannabis be received for information. Thank you again, Mr. Jeffs, for taking your time to come before council.
Just have a question on that. Call for your vote. Call for your vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Keep forgetting that.
It's okay.
Okay,
why I
motion
have
passed. Thank you. Okay, so that was the present. Now we have,
Now you're
don't we have to go now to the amended, didn't we have someone ahead of this now?
No, we're gonna go audit plan, then we're
Oh,
gonna go
then
to
we're
the
gonna
fire
go-
chief's report.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Next is the 2018 Audit Service Plan, which will be presented by Trevor Ferguson from the auditors Deloitte. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here. So, I'm here to present our 2018 audit plan on our audit of the town's financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2018. I won't take any offense to the people leaving in the midst of my presentation. It's quite all right. So we're here we'll be performing an audit of the town's financial statements for the year end. So what I would like to do is just provide a high-level overview of our audit plan. And I'm more than happy. I know that a number of you, all of you, this is your first term as counselors and whatnot. So if you have any questions about the process and what it is that we do, I'm more than happy to take them. So please you don't need to wait till the end to ask any questions. Feel free to just fire away as I go through if there's anything that comes to mind. So I hope that the slides are moving. If I need to do that, I need to do this. Okay. There we go. Okay. So our audit's explained. I'm going to go through the process at a pretty high level here, and then I'll get into some of the audit risks that we have as part of our audit of the town's financial statements. So the first thing in our process is to identify whether or not there are any significant events that have happened over the course of the year that will impact our audit. Currently, there are none that we're aware of. Obviously, there was an election and whatnot. That doesn't impact our audit of the town's financial statements, and there's nothing else that we're aware of, but the year isn't done yet, so there's many things can change. We've already been engaged by the town to perform the audit. We do have an amendment letter that was signed just because there was a change in audit standards this year. Our independent auditor's report that goes on the front of the town's financial statements is changing. That's as required. The Canadian audit standards around auditor reporting have changed. So our independent auditor's report is going to look different this year than what you would have seen in prior years. And that's the same for any audit of any financial statements. So it's not just for the town. With respect to materiality, so I'll just touch briefly on this. So obviously we're not on site every day auditing every transaction that happens at the town. So we do perform our audit with the concept of materiality in mind. We'll be basing that on a percentage of revenues as we always have in years past, and that's standard for any municipal audit. We do have a threshold, reporting threshold to the committee, which is 5% of our materiality. It's a very low number. And if we identify anything above that threshold, we'll be reporting it to this, to council as part of our year-end audit results report, whether or not it's corrected by management. As I said, I'll get to the audit risks in just a minute, so I'm going to skip over that piece. In terms of group audit, technically the audit of the town is considered a group audit, given the town's ownership in Peninsula Power. So we'll be relying on the work of that auditor as part of their audit, and bringing those into the financial statements of the town and make sure that we audit that. Okay, fraud risk. There's a big box on the top half of the page around fraud risk. This is not meant to raise any alarm bells. Canadian audit standards presume a risk of fraud around revenue recognition and management override of controls in any audit conducted under Canadian audit standards, so this audit is included in that. There are 6 bullet points here that I won't go through now. That highlights some of the things that we do as part of our considerations of the risk of fraud. Underneath bullet point number 6, there's a small paragraph saying that we'll ask the council for your views of the risk of fraud, whether you're aware of anything that you think needs to be brought to our attention. As we've done in prior councils, I will be circulating an email. I'll actually send it to the clerk, and the clerk will send out an email to you asking you to respond to any questions, and get back to me directly if there's anything that you want me to be aware of that you don't think I may be aware of, or if there's anything that you just want to speak to. So that would be our standard process, so we'll follow that again this year. So a couple of things I'm going to speak to in terms of our audit risks. So over the course of the next 2 pages, we've listed some of the audit risks that are in our audit plan. By no means is this a comprehensive list. So we've just highlighted some of the more significant areas. We have well over 100 risks on our file, so this is just some of the more significant ones. Many of these will be identical year after year because they will be by the nature of the municipality. So the first, I'm sorry, the color's a little hard for me to see on the computer, so I just got to get in a little close. The first around revenue and deferred revenue amounts. So this, again, is a presumed risk of fraud, as I mentioned earlier. So we deem that to be a significant risk, so we'll be doing a fair amount of detail testing in and around revenue recognition. The second piece around year-end cutoff, you'll see that for any audit of any set of financial statements. That's essentially to determine that the transactions of the town are recorded in the correct period. So we do some testing of transactions in early January and late December to make sure that the cutoff of those amounts is appropriate, that 2019 transactions stay in 2019 and 2018s are the ones that end up in your financial statements. The new risk that you'll see here, if anybody's comparing year over year, is around the adoption of new accounting standards. There are 4 new accounting standards that are impacting the town's financial statements this year, none of which are overly significant, if I'm being honest. I don't think any of them will have a great impact on the town. The biggest of the 4 is around related party transactions. So if the town was had transactions or balances with related parties, then there would be some additional required disclosures in the town's financial statements. We've already discussed this with management. We don't believe that there are any material related party transactions that need to be disclosed, but we'll be continuing our audit testing as part of our year-end audit, and we'll get back to you on that at our year-end results meeting. The last piece on the page here around tangible capital assets. Again, for any municipality, that would be a risk area that we would want to look at. So we'll be testing both the additions to capital assets as well as testing the amortization to make sure that it's reasonable. The last 2 risks that we'll highlight in our plan, the first on the top of the page is just around year-end accruals and other estimates. There are a number of estimates that go into the preparation of the town's financial statements. So around accruals, employee future benefits, if there's any contaminated sites that need to be accrued for, allowance for doubtful accounts. All those things are significant management estimates that they need to make, and we need to evaluate whether or not management's estimates were reasonable or not. We also look into those estimates to determine whether or not we believe there's any bias in those estimates. So we do what we call a look-back test. So we'll take a look at any estimates that were made in the 2017 financial statements, for example, and figure out what the result of those estimates were, what actually happened. So first of all, we'll get an idea as to whether management's doing a good job of estimating amounts, or whether they're close, and we'll get a trend analysis as to whether or not management is regularly overstating or understating amounts, things like that. We've never identified anything untoward in the past, but we're required to perform that testing, so we'll continue to do so. And the last piece around here that I'll highlight is just around management override of controls. I touched on it briefly. This is the last fraud risk that we're required to consider. One of the significant things that we'll be doing around here is testing of journal entries. So earlier in this document, and earlier just a few minutes ago, I spoke to materiality and how we do sample sizes of things, and we do all our tests using sample sizes and thresholds. When we do our journal entry testing, we do not do sample sizes. We do not use thresholds. We're specifically looking for fraud, again, as required by the standard. So we're testing journal entries. We're looking for any indications of perhaps somebody who is preparing a journal entry or isn't usually preparing a journal entry. Somebody who's approving a journal entry doesn't usually do that. Things that were perhaps posted very late on weekends or on holidays or very close to year end. We're looking for manipulation of the financial statements. That's what the standard requires us to do. Again, we've never noticed anything untoward in the past, but the standard requires that we perform this every year, so we're going to do it again this year. Appendix 1, this is our audit approach. The audit approach requires that we provide those in charge with governance, being council, a copy of our audit approach so that you can see what it is that we're doing. I'm proposing to not go through this tonight. The meeting will go a lot longer and some of you might fall asleep. So I'm not going to do that, but by all means I'm happy to take any questions. If any of you want me to go through anything in detail, I'm more than happy to do so. Appendix 2. So over the course of 2 pages, we've listed out the 21 communication requirements directly out of Canadian audit standards. So down the left-hand side, we've listed those 21 items, and on the right-hand side, if you weren't asleep from reading Appendix 1, we added the Canadian audit standard reference on the right-hand side here, so I guarantee you won't make it through all 21 items, but it's there in case you want to have a look. Appendix 3, this is just around new and revised auditor reporting standards. I referenced this off the top of my presentation. So again, our report is going to look different this year, and that it'll be a standard worded report. It's not wording that we just come up with. CPA Canada prescribes the wording to the report, so you'll be seeing that. Appendix 4 briefly highlights some new and revised accounting standards that are coming up that will be impacting the town in the next few years. Nothing imminent. The next standard that'll be impacting thing is around financial instruments, and that's another 2 years away. And asset retirement obligations is another 2 years after that. So we've got a little bit of time, but we're already talking to management about those things, and we believe that we're in good shape thus far. And the last piece is just some resources for council if there's anything that, just some learning and growth if you're interested in best practices around corporate governance and whatnot. So that's it from me, but as I said, I'm happy to take any questions or go through anything in more detail as you wish.
Okay. Mr. Ferguson, thank you for your presentation. Does council have any questions for Mr. Ferguson? Councillor Kaur.
Yes, on page 4, it says audit risk, management override on control. Could you just go over that? And I read that, and it's on page 4.
Yep.
I have 2 questions. Okay, go ahead. That's the first question.
Sure. So management override of controls, that's essentially, it's Canadian audit speak, that term. Essentially what that's trying to get at is an organization can have the best system of internal controls known to man, but if management has the ability to override that system, then it's useless. So this is our testing to determine whether or not management is overriding the controls in place at the town. So that journal entry testing, that's a way in which if management wanted to manipulate the financial statements, that's one way in which management can do it. So that's testing that will be performed.
Okay. And my second question through you, Mr. Mayor, on page 6, paragraph 1, we will also inquire if council is aware of tips or complaints regarding town finance reports, and it goes on and on. What's the purpose of that, and what do you want from me as a councillor with this audit?
Yep, that's part of what I was referencing about the email that'll be going around to council. So it's what I'll be asking you. Sorry, excuse me for just checking the exact wording, but if you look on page 2 of our plan, underneath bullet point 6, I'll be, through the clerk, we'll be sending an email to all councillors asking about your views about the risk of fraud at the town, whether you know of any actual or suspected fraud that has affected the town, and the role that the council exercises in the oversight of management's anti-fraud programs. That is exactly what I'll be asking the town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I think council's satisfied with your report, Mr. Ferguson. Thank you for coming out this evening and giving us an overview. We look forward to your company doing the work again.
Thank you very much.
Motion put forward by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved, the council receive the presentation from Mr. Trevor Ferguson from Deloitte respecting the 2018 audit service plan for information. All those in favor? And motion is passed. Okay, so next, we were, right, 11.21 is going to be 11.21 on the agenda sheet, and that will be the fire radio replacement requested by the fire department. Are you making a presentation, Chief?
No, they're just gonna present the,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
present
sorry.
the motion. He's there to answer questions.
Okay. So this motion put together, put forward by Councilman Grant, seconded by Councilman Wink. Be it resolved that council approves issuing a purchase order to the supplier, which is Motorola, prior to December 31st, 2018, to secure pricing established with the Niagara Regional Police and Fire Services, and that council receive and expense the purchase as part of the 2019 capital budget. Any questions on this motion? Oh, there we go. Councilman Hildebrand.
Yeah, I have several questions on this motion. And I'd like the fire chief to confirm my understanding. Oh, sorry, not on the motion. I want to go over the details.
Oh,
Can I
yeah.
ask those questions?
Is this?
Yep, okay. Before I became a counselor, I refer that to my life BC because my life was totally different and I'd be asking a lot more details. However, I realize the importance of the schedule and getting this purchase order approved, so I'd like to confirm my understanding and receive an explanation where necessary. I understand from your report that this expenditure had previously been approved under the different financial arrangement by the other council. And basically, I think it was $45,000 for the first year, $30,000 for the next 15 years, per the previous council. I've got 4 questions, so if you don't, is it okay if I give you all 4 at once and you can respond to them in that order? Essentially, because of the past agreement being canceled by another municipality, Pelham is now placed in the position to have having to budget for the capital of expenditure of almost $300,000 for this coming year. Now, when I talk about the total expenditure, what I'd like to really find out is what truly is the total expenditure. I know that's a capital expenditure, and your report says for the radios. But is that truly the total number that when I'm going to ask the treasurer and director of corporate services for, did we meet the budget? Did we spend more? Did we spend less? Is what number am I going to look at? So when I'm buying a car, I don't want to find out afterwards that I have to buy floor mats, tires, and all that kind of stuff. I want a total final number on that kind of thing. So when it comes to the approval of the motion, I'd like to know exactly what the total value of the expenditure will be and ask whether you can provide a breakdown and the value that you are asking for approval in this motion. And then finally, I'd like you to address the liability and the risk concerns attached to this request if we don't update the equipment. And, you know, what the potential is if we don't approve this motion tonight. Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor. So as far as the expenditures go, the hardware, including all radios, mobile units, portable units, and base radios, the total cost before tax is $291,4779, and I believe I sent that quote sheet out to
Yep.
council.
Yes.
The installation to our truck, so to take all our old equipment out and put all our new equipment in, is done by a separate company, which is Bell, and the cost of that is $6,209.41, and subject to tax. And the that's the total cost of the program. And then we, on the, if you look at the operating side of the budget,
Right.
we pay St. Catharines and the NRP services for dispatch and software maintenance. So that shows up in the operating side. But as far as changing the entire program over hardware-wise, there, all the accessories, all your bells and whistles, everything is in those two figures.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as liability goes, we currently operate on an analog system, 153-800, which is a low band. We share it with 3 other fire departments. It's a single communication band, meaning that if I'm on a fire scene and I'm talking to communications, and Barry, Waynfleet, or Welland chime in on the same radio frequency, like key it into their mic, whoever has the strongest signal will walk over the other user. So it's very difficult for us to operate in a emergency scene when there's other operators walking over top of us. So if you're kind of thinking on your cell phone, you're having a conversation with on cell phone from you and me,
Right.
and there's 3 other people that keep chiming in on over top of us on a totally different subject. The risk is that if during an emergency situation, if I had a firefighter fall through a floor and he had to call a mayday, and at the same time Welland was talking on that frequency, I'll miss that mayday, firefighter dies. So I don't think you can get any more risk than that for the
Right.
town. This system is a high-frequency 700 megahertz band. It runs on a system of single operating channels. So we call them tactical channels. So when St. Catharines dispatch us to a call, whatever that call may be, it will say pump 1 or pump 2 or pump 3, whatever equipment's responding, respond and operate on TAC 5, say. There's a number of tactical channels. That is isolated totally to us. No one else can get in on it, no one can talk on it, only the equipment that is assigned to that tactical channel. So we've reduced that risk of overwalking or over-talking and so forth. It also gives us the ability to interoperability to talk to the police and to other fire departments. Currently, I can, in my radio, or our radios, we can talk to, including ourselves, 5. So we have, out of 12 municipalities, I'm only able to talk to 5 municipalities. So if I respond into Fort Erie on a mutual aid call to assist Fort Erie, I have no means of communication. Under the new system, they will patch us in, and when we get there, we will be able to talk directly to all Fort Erie equipment. So it gives us the interoperability.
Can I just reconfirm, so the final PO that you're being issued, is gonna be issued is 297,600, or in that, under 300,000?
The PO that we need to issue
Plus tax.
prior to December 3rd, through you, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the PO we need to introduce, to issue is to Motorola.
Right.
That's for the 291,647.79. That needs to go in before the 31st because the contract with the NRP runs out at the end of 2018. If we don't participate and we buy the equipment in 19, the price goes up 20%, which represents $60,000. The PO for Bell, the hardware installer, they do not require a PO prior. They will accept a PO in 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I can remember when I was on council back in 14 and 15 that this issue was coming down the tracks even then. So we've had quite a heads up on it. And I can remember even back in 2015 talking to some of the volunteers that the equipment back then was not charging right. You had to piece it all together. So I think it's a tribute to you guys that you've put up with this for as long as you have. And of course, when it comes to a public safety or to a safety issue, yeah, obviously it's That's obviously a needed upgrade. Thank you, Chief. So, so it be resolved, did I already read this, or should I read it
You can
again?
call a question, you can read it again, or you can call
Oh.
a question.
I need practice reading. Be it resolved that council approves issuing a purchase order to the supplier of Motorola prior to December 31st, 2018 to secure pricing established with Niagara Regional Police and Fire Services, and that council receive and expense the purchase as part of the 2019 capital budget. All those in favor? Okay, motion, all those against? Motion passes. Moving right along. So next on your agenda, it says, of course, we have a report by regional counselor. Regional council has only met once. That was on this last Thursday. We met from 3 o'clock till midnight. Did quite a few. Did one staff change, I guess, and then today I came on my emails that the regional council had quite a number of staff changes again in senior management, which will no doubt be in the paper tomorrow. Adoption of minutes. Motion put forward by Councilman Corr, seconded by Councilman Hahn. Be it resolved that the November 5th, 2018 council minutes be deemed to be approved, and that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1, December 1st, 2018, council orientation, and 2, C-19/2018, December 3rd, 2018, council. Any questions, have omissions on these minutes noted by anyone? Okay, put this motion to a vote. All those in favor? All those against? Motion is passed. So then we're down to business arising from council minutes.
And nothing was raised, so now you're going to ask if anyone has any consent items
Okay.
to lift.
Okay, so now we're down to number 8, request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration. The consent items will be any 9 all the way to, just for council's benefit, all the way to number 10. So, obviously, hopefully you've looked this over. Is there any councilman that wants to pull any of those items in the consent agenda? Okay. So, Madam Clerk, do I read each one of these?
I have a motion for you
Oh,
here.
okay.
It's 3 pages.
Reading practice now.
There you go. Here's my reading practice. So a motion put forward by Councilman Stewart, seconded by Councilman Chofie. Be it resolved that the following consent agenda items be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 9.3, staff reports of a routine nature for information or action. 9.3.1, 2019 budget schedule. Be it resolved that council receive the 2019 budget schedule and that it be approved and forwarded to the upcoming strategic planning meeting. 9.4, action correspondence of a routine nature. 9.4.1, Pelham Active Transportation re-term of appointment. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the Pelham Active Transportation Committee dated October 25th, 2018 for information, and that council amend the terms of Pelham Active Transportation to extend the current term an additional 6 months to ensure continuity of work by Pelham Active Transportation. 9.5, information correspondence items. 9.51, correspondence from Mike Schreiner, MPP, Greenbelt. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from Mike Schreiner, MPP, dated October 25th, 2018, for information. 9.5.2, Township of McKellar Resolution 208-317, Government of Ontario and AMO-governance models. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the Township of McKellar dated October 24th, 2018, regarding the Government of Ontario and Association of Municipalities Ontario governance models for information. 9.5.3, thank you letter, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 613. Be it resolved that council receive a thank you letter from Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 613, dated November 12th, 2018, regarding the 2018 Poppy campaign for information. 9.5.4, thank you letter, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Be it resolved that council receive a thank you letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated October 31st, 2018, for information. 9.5.5, Town of Kearney Resolution Voters List for Municipal Elections. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the Town of Kearney dated November 23rd, 2018, for information, and that council support resolution number 10D3-21-11-2018 from the Corporation of the Town of Kearney in regards to the creation, maintenance, and general quality of the municipal voters list. 9.5.6, City of St. Catharines, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the City of St. Catharines dated November 28th, 2018, for information. 9.5.7, Town of Fort Erie response to City of St. Catharines, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Be it resolved that council receive correspondence from the Town of Fort Erie dated December 11th, 2018, for information. 9.7, committee minutes for information. 9.7.1, Seniors Advisory Committee minutes. Be it resolved that council receive the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee minutes dated July 13th, 2018, and September 5th, 2018, for information. And lastly, 9.72, resolved Public Library Board minutes. Be it resolved that council receive the Pelham Public Library Board minutes dated October 24th, 2018, for information. That was a motion. All those in favor of this motion? And anyone against? Motion passes. I don't have to sign this? Oh, up here at the end. There we go.
Page 10.
Page 10. Okay. Over here.
And we've already done,
Oh, don't have that?
we've
Yep.
already done this, so.
Yes. So we go all the way now to 11.2.2, the council tax change. Motion put forward by Councilman Wink, seconded by Councilman Corr. Be it resolved that council approve remuneration scenario 2 as outlined in Appendix 1, effective January 1st, 2019, representing an increase of $13,730 in the 2019 operating budget, and that council be paid in accordance with scenario 2, effective January 1st, 2019, and instruct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw. Comments? Yes, Councilman Wink.
So someone had to move the motion forward, so I put my name forward, but I oppose what's been presented, taking scenario 2. We didn't come into council for the money. We did it for the betterment of the community. We're indicating that we need to be fiscally responsible as a community, and the fact that scenario 2 is going to add another $13,000 to the bottom line of the town is not acceptable to me. So based on the report that's provided, I would support scenario 1, where there is no additional increase for staff or for council.
For council, thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Hardiman.
I agree with Councilman Wink. I did not run for the money, or I ran because I had a firm belief I could make a significant difference. I'm not here just to tackle the possible. I'm here to tackle what seems to be impossible. Mark Twain says, "We achieve what we conceive and believe." And I believe that's what this council stands for. I'm not in favor of this. The other point I'd like to address is this motion was the result of a 2017 federal budget that required municipalities to have all their politicians to pay their entire tax on their entire salary. Municipalities had until January the 1st, 2019 to make the necessary changes. This is what I refer to as downloading a problem to municipal governments. The federal government hoped the council would pass this increase on to their residents, and it would help their federal budgets by tax dollars. This is my simplified view of the situation, but I'm telling you, I stand for a big no about those kind of downloading of responsibilities and charges to any resident or any municipality. And I'll do everything in my power to stand against those kind of moves in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman. Councilman Coy.
I agree with my two colleagues. I will be voting for scenario 1. I think it's important that we lead by example. I know it's not much, but it's in the right direction.
Great.
So.
That's right.
Thank you. Councilman Trophy.
I also agree with fellow councilors. We're talking $300 here. It's nothing. Scenario 1 is going to have to be the way to go.
My 2 cents?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with all my colleagues here. Nobody does this for the money. We're doing this for the right reason. And absolutely, scenario 1 is the way to go. So that would be my
Very
choice.
good.
Absolutely.
And in case anyone wanted my 2 cents, I would, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Mary Ann.
I
Go
also,
ahead.
I also agree with my fellow councilors.
Okay, thank you for, I'm sorry I missed you, Council. And for my 2 cents, I will make it unanimous that council does in fact want to go with scenario 1. This came about because the federal government, like Councilman Bob said, they took away the 1/3 tax-free benefits from our wages, and to make that up, council did a report, and that was the report that we had before us. And councilman has unanimously turned down that extra cost to the town of $13,000, and we will be going with scenario 1. And, oh, I'm sorry, but we have to, but first we have to make an amendment.
You're going to call for an amendment?
Yes,
To
okay.
replace scenario 2?
Yes.
With scenario 1?
Okay.
And in 2 places, and to remove these statements here. So as outlined, so I would say make the amendment to go for scenario number 1 as outlined in the appendix,
Yes.
and then,
Oh, effective January 1st.
right, and then eliminate the words from representing to operating budget. You have to call for the motion first, and
Yeah.
then change this to scenario 1 as well.
Okay.
So you need a mover and a seconder.
Okay, but isn't this, so be it resolved the council approving nomination of number 2, then I just, as outlined in appendix 1, effective January 1st.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But
And
then you
but
would
then
take
stop
the
that.
increase out.
Yes,
So you want to
exactly.
remove those
That's
words
right,
and then
that's
change
right.
this to scenario 1, and we
Okay.
still need to prepare a bylaw.
Yes, okay, thank you. So now, because we are not going with scenario 2,
You need a motion to
Yes,
amend,
amend.
moved and second.
yes, so we need an emotion, not an emotion, we need a motion.
It's emotional.
Yes, indeed. To amend this resolution. So do I have a motion? Okay. Yeah. And a seconder, do we need a second? Okay, Councilman Wink. Okay, so now the reading,
Lincoln Hildebrand?
I'm sorry? Yeah. So now the motion reads, be it resolved that council approve remuneration scenario 1 as outlined in Appendix 1, effective January 21st, 2019, that council be paid in accordance with scenario 1, effective January 1st, 2019, and instruct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw. All those in favor of the amended resolution?
Of the amendment.
Of the amendment. Okay, all those against? Okay, so amendment passes.
And
Now
we
to
call for a
vote.
motion as amended.
Now, to vote for the motion as amended. All those in favor? And all those against? Motion passes. So there will be no Christmas at council. Very good. And, yeah, very nice to see council make that step. We're here to serve the people, not to make any money at it. Thank you. So a motion put forward by Councilor Stewart, seconded by Councilor Kaur. Be it resolved that council approve the change order to an upset limit of $80,000 for the purpose of constructing a temporary overflow parking lot until such time as the plaza is constructed. So perhaps this was added to the agenda right at the last, and perhaps, Mr. CAO, you could speak to this, please?
Mr. Mayor, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Council, for your indulgence on this issue. Unfortunately, it didn't make the agenda formally, so I'm appreciative that you've allowed this to come on as an amendment. The reason that this has come to the forefront is that we have a situation where we don't have enough council meetings in order to make a decision before the affected dates that you see in my memo. And what I'm speaking of specifically is two significant hockey tournaments in the community known as the Silver Stick tournaments. First, there is the regional Silver Stick tournament, which takes place December 27th to the 29th. That involves 58 teams. The second is the International Silver Stick Tournament, which takes place January 10th to the 13th, which involves 98 teams. And as you can see, those 98 teams come from all over North America, as I understand, and I'm not sure if there's any teams from overseas, but that is possible as well. The issue that we have with hosting the tournament is that now we have the facility with the rinks that are required. We have the issue of parking. Staff has been working on this issue and has come up with a solution to the issue that I believe is the most palatable and that does not require any new money to be set aside. And that proposal is basically we would like to be able to remove the topsoil from the land north of the MCC, which has currently been identified as known as the Woonroof or the Plaza area. The idea is that we would remove the topsoil and then place some granular material down, and that would be able to serve as an overflow parking that would accommodate the additional parking spaces that we feel that we need in order to accommodate these two tournaments. It will also serve as temporary overflow parking for other events that we may have between now and the formal construction of the plaza, if that is to happen in several years' time. The quote for the work is estimated at about $78,000, as you can see. We do feel that we can perhaps achieve a little bit of savings with that number if we were to use recycled granular material, which I believe we are able to, and the Director of Public Works can speak to that. And that we have the net cost for the temporary parking at $40,000. And that is to calculate 100 millimeters of depth. There is also the plan that we would be able to use the majority of that material at construction, so it wouldn't be a throwaway item. We would have to strip off the top level that had been contaminated by the parking, but the bulk of the material will be and can be reused for the construction of that area. It is covered, the expense is covered under the existing 2018 budget. And the reason that I am coming with this to council is that it would require a change order to, and I had said Rankin Construction, however, I will correct that. That is Beam that we would issue the change order to, and that Rankin would in fact be able to do the work. It's anticipated the work would take less than 3 days, so it's something that can be done quite quickly, and that it would allow us to be able to host these two important tournaments for the community over the Christmas break.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilman
Oh,
Court.
through you, Mr. Mayor. So we're not sharing any of the tournament with Welland? I know in the previous years we would have some games in the Welland Arena. So we're hosting the 58 teams and the 98 teams, and we're not sharing any of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would defer to the Director of Recreation to be able to answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, actually, both tournaments, we share resources with other municipalities, or we don't. Pelham Minor Hockey does.
Maybe I'm saying this wrong. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Are some games being played in Welland and some games are playing in, so this is not really 98 teams that are not all playing in Welland or in Fawn Hill?
That is correct.
Okay. So what's the percentage, through you, Mr. Mayor, what's the percentage of team or games being played in Welland?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not have the schedule where they're playing, although if I can speak on behalf with regard to the actual parking and the parking spaces that we do have available. I believe that we have 247 spaces approximately available at present time, which is very limited. It's basically half of the amount that that we should have. With the expansion out the front, we would have an additional 147, and we've also currently made a overflow parking of approximately 50 spaces, and that would bring us up to the level of parking that the facility would require on any day. If we have both of the full gymnasiums in operation, both of the rinks in operation, as well as the multi-purpose halls, both of them, as well as we have the walking track going on. We need additional parking, and this would alleviate everyday use, not only special events, where it's bringing in additional teams. For the International Silver Stick, we will be hosting the opening ceremonies. That's the January 10th event, and we could see up to that event has 100 teams, and we will have 4,000 visitors just for that event, and that's not including the actual games. That is for the opening ceremonies. So this project wouldn't only be used for large events, it would be used for everyday use.
Thank you. Councilman Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, as far as the quotes, have we received more than one quote for the work, or is this the only one?
CEO?
Yeah, again, this would be a change order to an existing contract, so that's the amount quoted by Beam Construction, who's already on the ground. We did not go out for additional quotes because, again, it's changing the scope of work that's already been awarded, so there's no requirement to do that.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, through the mayor to the CAO. it's clear to, I think, all of us that there's not adequate parking. And this is being called temporary parking until such time as the plaza is built. So we're going to use this for now. And as the town gets bigger and we get busier, where will we accommodate the parking that we need?
Again, the plan is for the plaza, the Wooner Plaza area is constructed, the proposed design is for it to be able to handle parking. So that's the idea, is that the plaza would be built, and then for overflow parking for these types of events, cars can park in that area, and that would serve as the overflow parking. So that's the long-term solution to that.
Okay, but then, okay, so when it's not being used for parking, then what would the plaza area be used for?
A variety of different events. Again, I would defer to the Director of Recreation to talk about programming specifically, but the design calls for some amenities to be in the outdoor space, so that in the summertime there's a proposed water feature, and in the winter there would be proposed outdoor skating. There would be other things like Canada Day events, there'd be performances, so on and so forth. Again, that would be things that would be programmed through the Recreation Department.
I can see that being in conflict with the needs for parking, though.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we're talking about facilitating very large events that are sort of one-off events, if you will, like the Silver Stick, which may happen annually. And again, we're trying to balance what the parking needs are for regular operations and what the parking needs are for one-off events like this, where you've got significant amount of people coming in from out of town for this. And again, that's we feel that's the easiest way to provide a temporary parking solution for these one-off big events. The other option is for council to look at taking a piece of land, and there will be a report coming to council to create an extension of the existing parking lot that would make it permanent as well. However, the issue there is that you would forego the value of that land through selling. So again, the land you could take off the market, if you will, create a parking lot, but then the town would realize the loss in that revenue, and then plus, or addition to that, the cost of actually building the parking lot would make for very expensive parking stalls if you were to do the math on those. So it makes more sense to do the temporary parking out front, build that out as the budget requires, probably several years from now, and that design would be able to handle these one-off events and handle overflow parking, which is really what this is intended to be, is the overflow parking, not to create permanent addition to the existing parking that we have now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could there be a possibility of just closing Summerside for the 1 or 2 days on both ends and using it as a parking lot?
I can't say that I have contemplated that. I could just off the top of my head think of a number of reasons why that wouldn't be. We wouldn't be able to do that. First, the drive aisles are fairly narrow, so I don't know how you would park the cars. So if you were to stack, you wouldn't be able to horizontally park, but if you vertically park them in there, once you've stacked all those cars up and somebody in the middle wants to leave, they wouldn't be able to. So I don't see that logistically we would be able to do that. However, I would be, if the Director of Public Works would like to chime in on that, I don't know.
Okay. Councilman Trophy?
This goes through you, Mr. Mayor. It's to the Director of Recreation. I'm not sure the name of the tournament, but the last tournament that we had, that we used a shuttle from the Hay Street Arena, how many teams were in that tournament?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that tournament, I believe there are 23 teams.
23 teams, okay. So it's considerably different.
It's considerably, through you, Mr. Mayor, the difference here is those teams, they were driving in. Many teams were local, or I guess that we did have a couple of northern teams that came in. The international Silver Stick and like teams are coming in. It's just the mass amount of teams that we have. And I do have to stress, every day we have seniors programs, we have adult programs, we have children's programs, and to have in the evening all of these people coming in at once, we just need additional parking.
Thank you. Any other questions? Before I ask for the vote, I guess I would just like to comment that I think this is myself, I think it's a good short-term solution to the problem. It's right at the north part of the arena, so so there's just the arena, the roadway, and then the parking spot's going to be right there. So it's going to be nice and close. And so so just to clarify, it's on the east side of Wellspring Way then?
That's
Yep.
correct.
Yes, and if anything, I'm a little worried, I'm a little surprised that we're just going to add 147, because really, you could go quite a ways over there, or is there that boundary also is that a parcel of land that you have sold?
Yes,
for
Mr. Mayor,
sale,
that's, it's not land that is for sale, it's
No.
land that is owned by the town, retained by the town, and it
Okay.
is in that area, so.
Okay, so that's why it's that size?
That's correct.
Because that's what we own?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Well, okay. So the vote on this then, so read it again. Be it resolved, the council approve the change order to an upset limit of $80,000 for the purpose of constructing a temporary overflow parking lot until such time as the plaza is constructed. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion doesn't pass.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, motion doesn't pass. Motion lost, I'm sorry.
Can I add something?
Pardon me?
Am I able to?
Let's go, Councilman.
I would like to be able to know, I understand you talked to Darren earlier about it being a change to an existing work order.
Yes.
Is there not an opportunity, though, to actually go and get another quote from another company?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could get quotes. I could say with confidence those quotes are going to be higher because you already have the construction company on site. So any new quotes are going to be quoting you mobilization costs, et cetera, that we're not currently experiencing because, again, they're on site. So I would anticipate the cost would be higher if we were to go out. However, that is a possibility. The second thing with going out for quotes is that time is of the essence. Again, you see that we've got a tournament coming up this month, and if we wanted to be able to accommodate that, we're going to have to move very quickly. So that was the other consideration that we had when we put this issue forward. So I just, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay?
Motion is lost.
Lost, yep, okay. So we're down to 12?
Bylaws?
I'm sorry?
There isn't any unfinished business or new business listed, so you're at the bylaw. At the bylaw.
Oh, I'm at the bylaw, okay. Presentation consideration of bylaw, number 14. Presentation and consideration, oh, I'm sorry, here we go, right here. So, for motion by Councilman Wink, seconded by Councilman Hahn. Be it resolved, the council of the town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Number 1, bylaw 4053, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with the Welland and District Humane Society for the prevention of cruelty to animals, and to appoint said society as animal control officers for the town of Pelham, and to repeal and replace bylaw number 3567, brackets 2014. Discussion on the motion. No discussion. All those in favor of this motion, raise your hand. Okay, and all those against, the motion passes. Okay, 15, motions and notices. So then we go down to 16, right? Yes. So matters of committee of the whole or policy and priorities committee. Now, Councilman Core, you had emailed many questions to the treasurer. And those questions should go to committee of the whole first, and where they will be answered at that and discussed at that policy, or either at the committee of the whole or policy and priorities committee, and that's where those questions will be addressed, and then all of council can debate those questions. And then if you wanted, we could add something to the next council meeting's agenda just to say that we had discussed them in committee of the whole. Is that how you would do that? If you wanted those questions not only discussed in committee of the whole, but brought forward to be possibly put on a, is that how that works? That you can put that on the agenda of the next council meeting, or would we just discuss his questions at the committee of the whole level? How would that work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and the CAO can add to this if he wishes. The questions have been received by the Treasurer and Director of Corporate Services, and she is developing the responses. However, they are questions that should be provided to all of council, so there will be a report coming either to the Committee of the Whole or Policy and Priorities or directly to council. And the Treasurer will work with the CAO to determine the best mechanism for that, to get it on the agenda so that all members have the information.
Okay. So
I don't know if the CAO has anything to add.
On CA, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. So Councilman Core, those questions that you have forwarded, they will be discussed at a committee of the whole meeting after staff has had time to look at them and prepare answers.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Matters arising over nothing, right? 17, okay.
Right.
Resolution, we don't have to do that, we realize that, so now we're confirming the bylaw.
No.
Okay. Motion put forward by Councilman Heidelbrand, seconded by Councilor Wink. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being a bylaw number 4056, 2018, to adopt, to ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 17th day of December 2018. All those in favor? All those against? The bylaw has been carried. And this meeting is over.
Nope, you want an adjournment motion.
Okay. Wait,
Almost.
almost. And it has been put forward by Councilman Trophy, seconded by Councilman Wink. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of December 17th, 2018 be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for January 21st, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.
Call the question.
Oh, sorry, gotta call the question. All those in favor? All those against? This meeting is adjourned.
So you may just want to say 5-minute break and then come back.
There's Lisa. Thank you very much for sticking with us this evening's program. Let's call to order the policy and priorities agenda. I see we have quorum, so for this December 17th, 2018 meeting. So our first order of business is the adoption of the agenda.
Don't need a seconder, so your mover is Councillor Stewart.
So Councillor Stewart has made a motion to adopt the agenda for December 17th, 2018. That the agenda for December 17th, 2018 regular meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Okay, motion passed. And I just sign here. Okay. Next order of business, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Does anyone have any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So noted. Nobody has anything to add to that. The fourth order of business is our audit committee terms of reference. So this motion is being presented by Councillor Wink, that the committee recommend to council that council adopt the terms of reference for an audit committee of council, and that all members of council are appointed to the committee along with 2 members of the public who possess a CPA in good standing. All those in favor?
No, sorry.
So you can ask for discussion.
Oh, is there discussion
I
at all?
want to talk about it first.
Discussion? Councillor Trophy?
For the criteria of the citizens, who will be setting that, and will there be an interview process, or?
Okay, Mr. CAO. would you
Through
like
you,
to
Madam
do that?
Chair. Yes, the way that it normally would work is that the clerk would post an advertisement and call for interested parties to apply. There is an application process, and those applications would come to council, and council would review them and make a decision based on what you feel is best.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Wink?
So in the presentation, it indicates that the committee would report on a quarterly basis. At our December 1st council orientation, we were advised that the income and expense statements would be available on a monthly basis. Additionally, I had asked if this could also include the balance sheet on a monthly basis. Am I to assume that council will receive monthly reporting and the audit committee will be providing the quarterly reporting as suggested in this proposal for public information?
Mr. CAO?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. It could, let me say simply, yes, that's correct. The financial statements normally come to council as a whole for approval. However, the audit committee itself can meet more than quarterly if so needed. So again, this is all a cyclical process. So when you're going through the audit process, it's going to get a little bit more busy, so you may need to have a couple more meetings. Quarterly is sort of at a minimum. So that's the discretion of the committee. And I see the treasurer may want to add to that comment as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. The audit committee's purpose is for the audit financial statements and the audit. So with regards to the monthly reports that we get that will be presented to council, that's part of the committee of the whole's report. So that's separate. So this is not a finance committee, this is an audit committee. So there is a difference between the 2 committees. So that information, the monthly information on the operating expenses, will come to the committee of a whole as part of my report to council. And so, so that's where we're looking at. I know you're saying you wanted to see some of the balance sheet items, and we're looking at to see if we can incorporate that into the committee of the whole meeting.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Mayor?
So I would just like to say that I'm really for this audit committee. I think that it's, and first of all, I'd like to say that I have the utmost respect and confidence in our treasurer. This audit committee, as I see it, will be another way for to get the figures communicated out to the public, maybe in a better way that the average Joe Blow public can digest them, and that's what. That's what I'm hoping that this audit committee does. Is, with the 2 outside people on the committee, they have to be qualified so they can talk the same lingo as the treasurer as such, and the fact that we have counselors sitting on this council that know, if not a little bit, above average amount about how to read financial figures. I just see nothing but positive aspects of this audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I believe this committee sends a very strong positive statement to the public, the staff, past, present, and today's and future council. I believe that accountability is here to stay. Accountability to me is the process that clearly communicates expected actions and sets up the stage for success. It establishes a culture of empowerment and trust. I believe that it shows that we are committed to be open and accountable. By stating that this audit committee is for the term of the council, the auditor and the council are saying that they are willing to place ourselves under the same scrutiny that we expect from past councils and staff. In conclusion, I'd like to ask the CA Treasurer and Director, Teresa Quinlan, to be given an opportunity to confirm her agreement with this motion.
Through you, Madam Chair. I am happy about the audit committee. My experience in the past has always been with the organizations that I've worked for or boards that I volunteer on. We've always had audit committees. So this is something that I'm very familiar with and very familiar in how an audit committee works. And it's an opportunity for the conversation, a little bit more detail, when the financial statements come out, for the members of council, and to understand, to ask some of the questions in a smaller format. So I'm excited about it. I'm happy. A lot of municipalities have audit committees, so I'm happy to see that the town of Pelham has adopted an audit committee.
Great. Anyone else? Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, are we voting on the one or two, or just voting on a committee? And then we're going to vote on what type of committee? Because I didn't hear.
So I'll repeat the.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll repeat the motion. The council adopt the terms of reference for an audit committee of council, and that all members of council are appointed to the committee, along with 2 members of the public who possess a CPA in good standing.
Okay, but there's also number 2 here, isn't it? Members of committee should be. Okay.
There's 2 options.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's the motion on the report, though.
I can address that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, through you, 2 options were presented. However, the recommendation is that the council adopts the terms of reference for an audit committee of council, that all members of council are appointed to the committee along with 2 members of the public. So that is the motion that has been presented. And if that one is carried, then that would be the structure of the audit committee once it's ratified by council in January. Okay, so based on this, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. It's motion passed, carried. Okay. Next order of business is Station Street Roundabout. Thank you, Madam Chair, this was an item that we were requested to place on the agenda. I believe the mayor had some questions or some ideas on the matter. There is no report for it, but I believe the mayor has some statements. Certainly. Mr. Mayor, would you like to speak to that?
So it came to my attention, or was brought to my attention by quite a few residents on on Station Street, that they were concerned. They didn't know the cost, obviously, but they were concerned that perhaps this project, which is being built with an eye on the future, anticipated increase in traffic, whether it be 4, 5, or 6 years down the road, and they thought that perhaps the stop signs that were originally proposed wouldn't keep the traffic flowing at that period of time, but that I think it's more or less, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think at this particular time, the roundabout, from a traffic point of view, isn't justified. So I had a meeting with the clerk, the CAO, and the treasurer, and the public works person, and it was nice of through them we were able to bring this back to council, because it was approved by the previous council, but they let it come back to council, and I'm just afraid. My fear, I guess, is that if we commit the money to this project, which isn't really needed now, but 4 or 5 years perhaps down the road that the way budgets sometimes work, and I realize they're never supposed to work this way, but I was afraid that if we committed ourselves to this budget, to this project, before we studied the 2019 budget, that we may have to put serious infrastructure work that needs to be done now for a project that maybe isn't required until 4 or 5 years down the road. So first of all, I'd like to thank staff for letting me bring this back to council, and so council can discuss it. Thank you.
Yes, certainly.
Madam Chairwoman, what I might recommend to council at this point is that there's obviously no report with the background information and et cetera, the budget information as the mayor's mentioned. What I might suggest to council is that you ask for the Public Works Director to write a report and bring it back to committee so that you have the proper information. You can look at the subject and have a discussion, and then that would inform the budget decisions that you will be making with regards to the 2019 budget, rather than trying to debate the issue tonight just with lack of information, but understanding what the mayor's concerns have been raised.
Okay, any other points of discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Tobey? Councilor Kelsey?
I just wonder, would there be a figure for that right now? Is that can be given, or the cost of that?
Through you, Madam Chairman, yes, Chairwoman, sorry, yes, there is. I don't have it off the top of my head. I don't know if the director can speak to that tonight. Perhaps he can.
Through you, Madam Chair, the estimate for the roundabout, as it is designed right now, is almost $700,000. And that work is under a current PO with Beam Excavating, and they are performing the work on the East Fond Hill site as part of their that's part of their scope work as it stands right now.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Speaker. So are we voting on getting rid of it? Or are we voting on delaying it?
I believe what's on the table right now.
'Cause I don't
perhaps, that
see
we
anything.
could
I just-
discuss is we could ask for a report, and.
So we're delaying any further movement on this project?
If council directs that, Madam Chairman, yes.
Okay, do we do a vote on this?
You would need a council direction
I
on
want
that.
to ask the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's a few more questions down here. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to request permission for Jason Marr to address the council, because I know that there's approximately a $1 million PO already issued. I'd like a project breakdown of that, and I'd also like him to provide some insight how, if we remove the traffic circle, how pedestrian traffic will head towards across the street, and then obviously they're walking down the street towards the MCC right now, blocking traffic, and that's not working so well. And also what we can do prior to the permanent sidewalk installation coming in, which occurs when East Found Hill is developed. Could you address that for us?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. The issue with respect to the roundabout as it's designed right now, obviously I think it's a good idea for myself to bring a report to council, laying out the design, how it came about, and the costs associated with that. I think that would be better served in a report that would come to council that you guys could then review and comment on. With respect to the roundabout as it stands now, if it's decided that we don't proceed with this at this point in time, then I don't see that there would be a requirement for a four-way stop. I think it would function as it stands right now with a two-way stop from Summersides and from Pelham Town Square. Pedestrian movements could be addressed. We could look at that through the engineer. That would also be part of the report that comes to council on, if this roundabout is deferred construction-wise, then what do we do in the interim to make it a safe site for pedestrians and for traffic? So that would come as a recommendation also in the report. Provide that.
Can you give me a complete breakdown? Because I realize that the purchase order that's presently issued is in the tune of $1 million. They're in round numbers. Can you give me a description of how that is all broken down and what's committed and what has to be done and what we can delay, in your opinion?
Sure, yes. Through you, Madam Chair. Currently, the outstanding work that's to be, well, there are several purchase orders that have been issued to Beam Excavating. The outstanding amount on those purchase orders that's left to be completed, work that may or may not be completed, is in value of just over $1 million. Of that $1 million, there's $700,000 that would be attributed to the roundabout itself, and then there's $300,000 of additional work, additional sidewalks in the East Fond Hill area and landscaping work that still needs to be completed. Of that $300,000, we've got estimates of about $110,000 to complete that work. One of the things that I would like to bring forward as part of my report as well is a plan to put a temporary sidewalk in on Summersides until that development's complete, so that we can have safe pedestrian movements down Summersides, linking Station Street and the MCC.
Through you, Madam Chair. Can that report also say, is that $300,000, can that be delayed as well, or is that construction underway?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, there is a portion of that work that is currently being completed. I think I have the numbers here. So of that $300,000, we have commitments to complete sidewalk work in the amount of $97,300. That work, I believe, is completed now and will be invoiced. And then the topsoil and sod restoration, there's a value of $11,000 which needs to be completed in the spring, and that's work that we've committed to.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we were to delay the roundabout for whatever years, does that mean that the water mains get repaired that much quicker along Station Street? Because there's a huge issue, from what I understand, with respect to the water mains that are in there right now. They've been there for decades, and there's some serious issues with respect to possible quality of water that's going through there.
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. There is a separate contract that's been issued for the water main replacement from Highway 20 to Port Robinson Road on Station Street, and that work is proceeding, and it's separate from the roundabout work.
So the roundabout work, if we were to go ahead with the roundabout work, would the water main work proceed prior to the roundabout?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, the water main work is continuing right now, and we're going to be completing that project, that installation from Highway 20 to Port Robinson Road. It's independent from the roundabout work.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? So, I guess I would make a floor to
Call for a motion to direct staff. to
Okay, so
prepare
I would like to call for a motion then to have staff make a report to us in regards to the roundabout. All in favor? No.
Did you have a mover? Sorry.
Oh, you need a mover. Yeah.
Oh, I need a mover and a shaker.
Just one mover. Don't need a shaker in these meetings. No shaker needed.
Okay, Councillor Wink and Councillor Hildebrand.
You just need one.
Okay, Councillor Wink. And all in favor? We'll do that one more time, just for fun. It's unanimous, so that motion carries. So I don't have to sign anything because there's nothing to sign.
That's right.
And you want that report when?
Oh, we'd like that report when?
Yeah, we need some guidelines, otherwise we get it next year.
Oh.
No, I'm joking.
Next year.
Is that something
Seems
you'd
so-
like for the next,
I know, 3 weeks from now. Okay.
Would you like that for the next council meeting, next committee meeting?
Is that realistic?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Next committee meeting,
For the
perhaps?
next committee meeting, would that be?
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
That's doable?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. And I don't believe there's any old business to discuss. So Councillor Hildebrand has made a motion that the regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for January 21st, 2019, following our council meeting. All in favor? And